Hey guys, welcome to Vue Nation. I'm Zernonia, and today I'll be sharing a very familiar yet interesting topic, which is building a component, but with primitives using Radix Vue. And I'm from Malaysia. Currently, I'm working as front-end lead at Troop Travel Inc. I've been working about 2.5 years now already. Yeah, and I am the core maintainer of Radix Vue as well as Radix Vue. I'm not sure even I pronounce it correctly. Nobody knows how to pronounce it. But yeah, and you can pretty much find me anywhere with my handler at Zernonia. Twitter, GitHub, or even Discord. You can find me there. So without further ado, let's build a component. So I believe all of us are familiar with building a component. It is the fundamentals of building a high-level organized structured applications. So when it comes to building a component, there's always a lot of complexity, or there's a lot of abstraction. There's a lot of challenges that sometimes we just wasn't aware of. I'll explain on that later. But for now, I believe everyone built a component, including myself. Every day, I will need to build a component. And now let's look at a real-world design, real-world component. I stole it from my company. All right? So let's look at this component. Let's look at this prototype, Figma prototype. When I click on this button, it will show the popover. And it has input and a list of items. And definitely, every time there's a component, it comes with the user story. Let's have a look. Number one, we expect the popover to open when the button was clicked. So this button would open the component and the popover, sorry. Then number two, user can navigate to the profile page. Clicking on this, okay. User can search by organization name. So this input here, if I type anything, it would search this list and filter it out. Number four, user can select the organizations. So user click on the button here, the item here, and it would show a check mark as selected. Okay, sounds simple. And number five, close popover when click outside or escape key was pressed. It's sort of similar to a dialog component, meaning if I interact outside of the content, it would close the popover, it will close the content. Okay. Number six, user can log out with the logout button. Okay. This looks pretty simple, right? It's straightforward enough and challenge accepted, right? But before we delve into it, let's think. Let's take 30 seconds, all right? I challenge you guys to think. What would you do? What was your plan if you were presented with this user story? Let's try to think. Okay? I believe you guys can pause it, or never mind, you can follow along. So for me, the action plan would be, first, find the popover component in the UI library that I am using. Other than finding that, I also need to think whether it able to position itself in the bottom right, as you can see from the design itself. Okay. Number two, I will try to think. I'll find a component that is similar to this searchable list box in my UI library. Number three, after finding them, I need to hook up all the logic as well as styling the component as per the design. However, most of the time, we would have a few problems. It always has. The first, you will be wondering why there is no such component. Come on. My component library, where is this component? I can't find it. Number two, even you can find the popover or an overlay panel, why can't I position it at the bottom right? Why can't I just place it at the bottom right as per the design? Number three, why can't I extend the select component? I have this select component, but I want it to be always open. I want the component be static and always open. And when I search, it will apply the filters. Why I can't extend it? Number 4, how can I override the styling with this component? Most of the time when in the UI library, we have a very prefixed design. But look at the component just now, it seems like it's not so default, or we might need to override some styling. And most of the time, we have to put an exclamation mark in front of our styling if you are using Tailwind CSS. So that's the idea. That's what we felt. The first time when we try to execute a plan, we will feel very frustrated. Why? We roll our eye back. And the end, what you will think? What will you do? You say, I will build from scratch. Yes, it seems straightforward enough. I'll just build from scratch. All right. So now let's build it from scratch. Don't worry, guys. I already created the component from scratch, literally. And let me present it to you guys. So this is a component that as you can see, it is all raw HTML. There's no any component library. UI library is all scratch, and some of the logics that are being populated here. So let's have a look. So at first, we have this popover. If I click on the popover, okay, it opens up the content. At its position, quite correct. And I click on the button, it should navigate me to the other page, okay? And if I search on the list, let's say I search for 2, okay, filters fine, the item collapse itself, nice. Okay, I can scroll, I can select, no problem, and I can log out, okay? Now let's click outside, interact outside is closed. Let me press escape. Okay, cool. Seems like I got it done. Yeah, straightforward, right? Let's look at the code, a breakdown of the code, yeah, of how we implement it in our applications. So first, we have a popover. So we have a trigger element and a content element and a state which indicates whether is it open. And we have 2 very useful composables from viewers. Thank God for them. All right. So I will close it if I click outside, and if I click on the trigger, I ignore it. And if the user keystroke on escape, I would prevent the default and I will close it. And next, I will position the CSS with absolute and bottom 4 and left 0.05%. Seems easy enough. By the way, this is Tailwind CSS class. Okay, seems pretty straightforward, right? So, however, there's a few gotcha. What if we have another overlay or a dialog component built on top of this popover? If we press the escape key, it will close the popover, this current popover, immaturely. We don't want it to be closed. We want the topmost level to be closed. Secondly, the content doesn't auto-position in a smaller viewport. As we are using CSS absolute, positioning is not reactive positioning. So in a smaller viewport, it's going to get overflow. And lastly, it doesn't have this accessibility built in. It doesn't trap the focus. The tab focus will be lost if I close the component. All right, but at the plain side, it works, right? It works. Now I'm just going to push it. I'm just going to merge it. Shh, don't let the QA team know. Shh. All right, next, the list box. Again, it is quite easy from the scratch. We just built an input component with a few of the buttons. And definitely we have this search term that will perform the filtering based on the list here. And have some placeholder. And here is how we render the check mark. So if the selected item is the index, the value here, then we render a check button. It's that simple, right? There's a few gotcha as well, unfortunately. Is that it loses the accessibility of the combo box, of a list box. Usually when we focus on the input item, we can click on the user, the up or down arrow input navigations, and it will select the next item. Same goes to the home button as well as the end button. Technically, we can build it all into this list box manually, yes. But since it is not part of the user story, I'm just gonna leave it for now. So, what do we do here? Introducing Radix Vue. So what Radix Vue is? It is an unstyled, accessible primitive component for building high-quality web app with Vue. It comes with Vue and Nuxt supported. And it saves time and makes you ship much faster. Instead of reinventing the Vue, you can build the accessible component easily. Next, yes, accessibility out of the box. It is ARIA compliant and it supports keyboard navigation as well as focus management. Developer experience first. As it is an unstyled element, you can easily style it however you want and use whichever framework you want. You don't need to think about overwriting some of the styling. And also, because it is a primitive, similar to how an element in HTML works, you can position it wherever you want. So let's say you want to position the inbox after the list. Just move the element beneath it. It is easily customizable. Trust me. And next, lastly, it is compatible with other UI library. There's a lot of great library out there, and if they're somehow missing this component, you can try out Radix Vue as it is compatible. So now, let's swap our component just now from scratch with Radix Vue. We will be using popover as well as the combo box provided from Radix Vue. Let's look at the demo. So here, we have a popover. As you can see, a popover root with popover trigger. So if I click on this popover, it will open up the content, all of the content here, combo box and stuff. So let's look at the accessibility here. So if I click outside, yes, it closes out. If I click escape, yes, it works. And how about positioning? So let's say if in a smaller viewport, see, it auto prioritizes the positionings. Okay. And if I click escape, it focuses back on the trigger element. Next, let's look at the combo box in these sections here. So combo box, we have the input as well as a combo box content with items. So you can see we swap out some of the item here with the code. And let's try it out. If I search for 2, okay, it works. And now the accessibility works is that if I click on down button, it selects the height hover over the element. And if I click enter, it selects it. So it is selected here. And if I click on home, it selects the first item. And if I click N, it will select the lower, like the N value with, it will auto scroll into view. So yeah, and I can select it. Let's say I can select it as such. If I click enter, okay, it select well. So if I filter it out and I select, and it clears out the input as well. Everything looks good. Combo box. So now we have solved the two major issues with the accessibility. But before that, let's quickly look at some of the changes in details. I mentioned the change swapping with popover. We are using it from Radix Vue namespace component. So as you can see, there's a few props here. We have the site props to position the content at the site, and we have an offset of 10 pixels. Next, we have align a component, whether is it start, center, or the end. Right now we want to position at the end, so it will stick to the bottom. And we also added an offset of 14 pixels. And as I mentioned earlier, we have this prioritized position. Okay. Next is the combo box. So for the combo box, we also firstly import from the namespace combo box, and we swap out with, we add this combo box root. We've added a few V model The first is the selected organizations. Second is the search term, V model search term. So it will be reactive. And we have the props as true, indicating that the list box, the content, will always be open. Last, the display value is to clear off the search term when we select an organizations. Other than that, we also have some changes here in the combo box item, where we swap out the list, the V4 with the list of item, and we set the value of I to that item. And we just need to add another items indicator here. It will show the indications with a check mark. We don't need to have conditions to say, okay, if this is equals to select the organization. No need. So yeah, that was easy, right? It's just that easy. We can swap out the current component that has some accessibility issue with Radix Vue. And now we can finally ship, I would say, a complete component with Radix Vue. So you might be asking, what are some of the library that was building around Radix Vue? Currently, we have this UI library, SHA-DCN Vue, as well as Float UI, and there will be something interesting coming up soon. Next, we also have some starter. As you can see here, it was created by community. Some are premium, some are free. So definitely check it out if you want to kickstart with an accessible web applications. And lastly, do leave a star for us on GitHub. It will be greatly appreciated. And if you have anything, check out the doc, radixvue.com, and chat with us on Discord. If you have any question or if you found any troubles, yeah, just reach out to us in the help and questions sections. We will try our best to answer, and the community will answer as well. So next time around, when you're about to build a component, before stepping into building from scratch, why not consider Radix Vue? Of course, do let me know. If you are using Radix Vue, we can showcase it among the community. Thank you, and have a great day. God bless.
All right, great. We have a few questions for you. Loved the talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. First one we have is, does Radix Vue have native support for tree shaking?
Yeah, previously in the previous version lower than 1.3, we do not have a complete tree shaking. But after Vue upgraded to 3.4 as well as the packages, right now the tree shaking is much better right now. If you look at the PR, I've linked it on the website itself. You can check out the before and after, the size of after bundling. Yeah, it is tree shaking very well right now.
All right, thank you. How does Radix Vue prioritize accessibility by design?
I'm not sure I understand it correctly. One thing I should mention is that Radix Vue is based on the Radix UI ported from React to Vue. So most of the components are already well designed by the team from Radix UI. And I'm not sure how they made their decision in terms of prioritizing the accessibility. But from Radix Vue, we also we further extend upon that component. We included more of the more component, what combo box and some of the OTP input. From there, we started looking deep into accessibility. We are always referring back to the W3C for to make sure it is compliant. And one good thing about the way we construct the component is that it is primitive. Each component that you add in, it should have handles their own accessibility. So we don't need to worry about too much the design of it. But yeah, if there's the component is placed outside of the root component, we will throw an description, we will throw a warning or an error regarding some of the accessibility issue.
This next question kind of is in the same realm of ensuring accessibility using primitives for custom components. Do you have any, like adding to the last question, do you have any best practices that you would recommend?
Yeah, one good thing about the Radix design is that once you follow the anatomy, if you go to the document site, and there's one section called anatomy, once you place the relevant component similar to how the anatomy shows, you shouldn't need to worry about too much about the accessibility issue, as it will be auto-inferred. Let's say some of the ARIA labels, some of the ARIA described by, it has already been built in. You just need to make sure that the anatomy follows according to the documentations.
Thank you. And you went into this a bit, but just to re-clarify, what resources and learning materials are available to help developers quickly get up to speed and start building the components?
Yeah, actually, I've been thinking of creating more materials on that. Maybe some YouTube video to showcase, to go deeply. Because Radix Vue, it is the concept of using primitives to build a component, it is kind of new, and it is not that, it is kind of new for Vue developers, as we have been familiar with using one component, adding a lot of props, and accessing some of the slot props. But using Radix Vue, it is a bit different. I believe, there's not much of the documentations or learning material right now. Not to say documentation. The documentation is good, just that the resources and the learning materials, I hope that I can, and maybe the community could help us to write some blog posts or maybe create some video on that. Yeah, it would be super helpful.
I'm taking that as make sure everyone follows you on like social media to make sure they stay up to date and see too.
Yeah, but actually there will be more exciting news coming up maybe in a week or two regarding some updates revolving the whole organizations. But stay tuned,
Okay. What does the flexibility of Radix Vue come at any performance cost compared to traditional styled component libraries?
Yeah, it depends on how we consume the component. By default, I don't think it would have a lot of performance issue, as we have tested quite thoroughly. Just that how the user construct the component might not be might be the bottleneck sometimes, as it is different. Let's say in a well-built component, we just need to pass it the data, let the filtering, everything handled internally by the component itself. So for Radix Vue, it's a little bit different. You need to handle some of the filterings yourself. If that is not done well, or it might, I would say, lead to some performance costs. But internally, the component should behave well. Unless you pass in like 1,000 or 1 million list of data into the component, then into a list of data, then they will cause some bottleneck. But I believe that is from the user point of view, though. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I mean, you kind of talked about this, that there's news coming up in the next week or two, but any upcoming plans or exciting features that are on the horizon for Radix Vue?
Yeah. I already dropped a hint just now that revolving some upcoming changes in Radix Vue. But in terms of features, there's one major features that we are working on is, I think I can showcase a little bit. I mentioned a bit, is that right now there's one MR work in progress to enable the IntelliSense. Is it IntelliSense that your IDE, when you hover over the props, it will show what the prop does. It's just like using a JS doc to document the props and what it does in the component itself. So when you're using the component and you see these props, most of the time we don't know what this prop does. And we need to go to the component library, or the website, the documentation site to understand, okay, this is what the props does. But right now, there's one changes coming in, which is to add you hover over the props and it will show the JS doc. This is, I believe it helps me a lot, because I mean, because in Radix Vue, we have a lot of components, and each component have different props. I believe this would be a great benefit, bring a lot of benefits in terms of DX.
Thank you. Thank you. And how does Radix Vue compare to headless UI?
Yeah, headless UI is a very good component library. As far as I'm not sure what their future plan is, but definitely one thing we have is that we have more component compared to headless UI, and we have much more. We have more plans in extending, in implementing more of the features, especially those components that were designed to have in the W3C compliance, but is not in the headless UI or in Radix UI yet. We are planning to extend more of it.
Awesome. Thank you. And can you share a bit of the pricing model that Radix Vue has?
I don't think we have any pricing model currently, as right now we are more of the community base. I'm not sure how the future will be, but definitely if you guys want to support the library, not only supporting me, I believe the whole community would be greatly appreciate if you guys wanted to support and let the library to have a long-term support. I believe that would be awesome.
Thank you. And yes, go support. Why is table component missing?
Yes, table component missing. I believe it always shows up as I think it's one of the most featured component. I believe building a table component, it is super complicated and everybody has different use case. And I know that using the native HTML table is a pain. And right now, there's no plan for table component as there's not much of accessibility need to be concerned about in terms of the table itself. Definitely, it is compatible. Radix Vue is compatible with other table component. One of the component that we're using in this CN Vue is the 10 stack table. It is very well-known table. I think it's more of a composables that we need to extend upon. So yeah, we don't have plans for table component, but sure, you can check out. I believe there's a lot of awesome table component out there.
Thank you. All right. 2 more questions. How does this work with something like Quasar in the same project, or should it be used over the other?
I wouldn't say to drop the whole UI library in favor of Radix Vue. As I have demonstrated just now, we prioritize the DX in terms of it's not a replacement. It should be an addition in what you need. Quasar is a very well-known library, and just in case if we have some trouble with the component, there's something just missing, and you are having struggle to maybe design the component differently or style the component differently, and then you should think of maybe considering Radix Vue. It is not a replacement. I would think of it as an addition to that.
Wonderful. Thank you. And what were the mentioned component libraries you were using?
You mean the surprise one? Just now I mentioned what were the mentioned component library? If you're saying what I show in the the demo just now, I believe every company and every dev has their own preference component library. And just now, in the end, I showcased 2 UI library that built around Radix Vue. One was the CN Vue, the other one is Float UI. Yeah, and there's 2 other started by the community. I think that's the question, right?
Yeah. And can you paste them in the chat or send them to us so we can make sure we get that information out too?
Yeah, in fact, I think I will just share the repo of the slides because it is using SlideDev. You can check out some of the demo of the component just now, how I swapped from the previous hand-built, like from scratch component, and the other one is the StatBlix for Radix Vue. Yeah, later I will share it on maybe my Twitter. I just open source it.
Awesome.
Yeah, just follow. Just I make it public. Yeah, you can find me anywhere. Zernonia.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Vue Nation.